if you don't mind, I'm not going to be in the pulpit. It's not my style. Um, so I'm not going to be brief. I've got about 150 slides to go through. So it's going to be full of pictures. I'm just going to take you through the pictures. I'll try be as quick as possible. I think most of the things have been articulated. Thanks for waiting until 5:15 to listen to the rubbish that I have to say. Basically, I'll take you through Ngqamakhwe, which is a town just based between East London and Butterworth. So if you draw a triangle, effectively, you've got Butterworth that side, you've got East London this side, Ngqamakhwe is in the middle, you get Ngqamakhwe, Queenstown, and then Ngqamakhwe is on further on the other side, which is about, go back. See, this is why I like driving my own bus. You need to go back so that I can introduce them. So I'm just going to go through about 6 themes that I've been going through the slides. It's just going to be pictures, guys, and I'm going to tell you about the experiences that we've been facing on site. And I'll take you through them. The pictures tell a story. I've got a lot of pictures, but I've kind of whittled it down to a couple of slides to take you through. So basically, I'll deal with the locality for those of you that don't know where Ngqamakhwe is. I'll deal with the inclement weather, which Ben has touched on. So basically, the long and short of it is that we've been delayed on this project roughly about 6 months, amongst other issues. Then we'll deal with the mafia, and then we'll deal with the last one standing, as I call them, and trying to get back on track. And then I'll deal with the other projects. Those are the things that I'm going to be running through in my slide. So basically, Ngqamakhwe, this is basically Ngqamakhwe. Ngqamakhwe is a one street town. So basically, everyone funnels through this town from Ngqamakhwe up in the northern south. And then if you're going down, you're going towards Ndabakazi to the southern side. And then if you turn left, I don't know whether it's east or right or west, you're going towards Butterworth. And then right, it takes you to East London. Everyone from Ngqamakhwe funnels through the town, goes to East London to do quite a bit of the shopping. If I point out, I'll orientate you through. So there's buses that come all the way from Ngqamakhwe and all the like to park here and ferry people in the morning and the afternoon back into their what do you call it? Villages. Thank you very much for that. Sorry, English, Jan escapen. You've got a ShopRite currently in town, ShopRite Cash and Carry. You've got a spa. Just an interesting thing about the spa, it's roughly about 600 squares. Just the supermarket, it does about 10 bar a month. Then you've got a liquor store, about 100 squares, which does about 6 bar a month. We're taking that same guy. He's going to be taking a store in our center where he effectively, I think I've got the design where I'll show you, where he's going to be doing an eatery, supermarket, and a bulk store. A bulk store for about 600 squares. Keep in mind, from 100 squares, that's the tops, to 600 squares. He's moving from 600 squares supermarket to about 2,500. Yeah. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. I just want to orientate you where the site is. This is the site. This picture was taken in about 2023, if I'm not mistaken. So there's buses that are parking here right at the back. You had people, interesting thing about what happened on this site is that when they heard that there was development that was about to happen, effectively people started building structures on site. Brick and mortar structures, shacks, and. We ended up, I think in the last count we had about 30 people. We had about 30 people, some in brick and mortar structures, and in some were running effectively drug dens there. So we effectively started on site. Actually, it was January effectively, but we handed over site, call it around about mid-November, late November last year, and there was a specific reason for that. Number one, we knew we're dealing in a territory that, number one, there's extortionists, which I'll touch on later on. There's mafia, and then there's a rain element of Eastern Cape. So we wanted to make sure that our contractor is on the ground, he's able to effectively garner all the resources, deal with whatever needs to be dealt with before they come effectively to start on site. So this started happening around about January, early next year. If you see in the background, there's still a shack, there's still a house, there's still a tavern, and there's stories to those. So effectively what happened is that, just hold on before you move on to the next one. The story behind those is that you had a lot of shack people that were willing to effectively be relocated. where the municipality offered land where we could relocate them to. That's number one, which was through our partner. And then number two, we were able then to give them an offer, well, not an offer, but an option, either to take the relocation amount of X in order for them to relocate. A majority of them literally had just shacks and they were not living on the property. They just put up those shacks effectively just to frustrate the process. As you'll know, that's currently been happening throughout the South Africa. And then those solid brick and mortar structures that you see up, those came through in the last couple of months before we actually started, before we even handed over the site. And those guys started demanding ridiculous amounts of money to the tune of 3 million, 4 million, et cetera, for them to move. But it will tell you in terms of how we dealt with that. As I started off with the disclaimer to say, this is probably one of the sites where you need to slaughter a goat because everything that has gone wrong here has gone wrong. I'm telling you, everything. And it's gotten to a stage where I think there were surprise visits that we used to do in order just to make sure that we're monitoring what's happening on site, whether it's raining or it's not raining. And some of the issues that we dealt with, you'll see through the pictures because also it talks a lot in terms of never believe people because of the name that they come from, in terms of whether it's a company, etc., because sometimes it's about the delivery and doing the work on the ground. I can go to Ben now and say, I'm from Alt, I can do this, I can do that, but in a different climate, different demographics, you're totally out of your depth. But I'll show you that through the pictures. So effectively, this was around about January this year. Had a little bit of sun. Can move on to the next one. Well, you can see it started raining and it became very misty a lot. In actual fact, at one point, I wanted to go to Ben to say they must increase insurance just for me because the flight here was very bumpy. So this is what we're dealing with. In actual fact, if you can pick it up from this photograph alone, it talks about how the contractor, which I won't mention name, but it's a well-known contractor, was not properly managing the site in terms of stormwater management, how they're going to reticulate through the site, but I'm not going to bore you those details. You can move on to the next one. That also tells you a picture. I'm dead. Okay. Go back. You need to go back to the other one. So that talks to a lot of these trucks were just standing still for a long period of time. And it had to do with how they were managing the site. That's number one. Number two, because there was a month where literally nothing was done because there was no management of the site, call it from the contractor side, of which we went back and penalized them for that. And then obviously from our side as well, we need to take ownership where we went wrong. I think also this thing of parachuting ourselves in, parachuting ourselves out, also kind of made me, more specifically, to spend more time around Eastern Cape and in these areas. So I spend a lot of time here, sometime probably about 3 or 4 days a week, if I'm not mistaken, where I was flying in and out, just to make sure that we get this thing back on track. Keep in mind that at this particular point in time, our delivery was October this year, which is where we are, and we were nowhere. Okay, can go to the next one. So that also gives you an indication in terms of what was happening on site where there's just puddles, people were not managing the site very well. If you look in the far background, you've got a huge retaining wall there. Again, it talks to that thing of over-delivery, and I think it came across, I'm not sure if it was you, Madre, saying that sometimes it's in the results that you produce. So we had a contractor that promised a lot of stuff, but in actual fact, it looks right to the layman. But that wall, we had to take it down. That's about 15 meters. On the front and the back, it's about 7 meters. So we had to take it down, rebuild it, but I'm going to come back to that. Can go to the next one. Again, I mean, it talks in terms of the horrible weather conditions that you've had. I think we had horrible weather conditions from about December all the way to about May this year in the Eastern Cape, where it was just continuously pouring. When we get a day off, then we will probably find a little bit of puddles. All our tests we have to test all the time, as those that are aware would fail, so meaning that we can't do anything, and it pretty much had to do in terms of how the center was managed by the previous contractor. Needless to say, we managed to get a separation agreement with the contractor to get another contractor on site so that we can have remedial action, so which is effectively some of the pictures that you're going to see downstream and hopefully tomorrow. So that's another, gives you a clear picture in terms of what is happening. In the midst of this, as you'll see, there's a container. That container, again, is the extortionists that we found in the area where guys were claiming their containers are worth about 3 million or whatever the case may be because they've been there for a long time. If you look farther in the distance, there used to be a shack here, which you'll probably see as well, which guys as well were claiming ridiculous amounts of money for those things. But these are things, unfortunately, that a lot of guys don't talk about because they don't talk about the experiences that they hit on the ground. And I think, to Ben's point, is that our biggest downfall at this point in time, which was what Eastern Cape has taught us, is that it's actually very difficult working in the Eastern Cape. It got into a point where we were half pregnant, and we actually had to look at ourselves actually at one point and said, we'll pull a trigger on this thing or we just persevere. If there's one thing, unfortunately, about me is that I always go against the grain with the team. Most of them felt that we need to abort the project, but I felt that we needed to persevere so that we can finish what we envisaged to start. At this particular point in time, the project is and still is, it's about 85% pre-let, and we have contractual obligations, not just to you guys as investors, but also to our other partners, which are the retailers. And unfortunately, once you disappoint them in one, it dents your name going forward. So we will never do that, and we'll try and persevere through the hardships that we face in such tough environments. You can go to the next one. Again, it gives you a picture. So this is where the SPA platform, so SPA is going to be sitting here, but as you can see at that particular point in time, we were nowhere. Next one. Again, this is the service road that's coming through the back, behind, into the SPA yard, which is here. As you can see, there's ditches in the platforms. It was horribly done. And as I said earlier on, it was needless that we parted ways with them. And then that gives you a better perspective in terms of when it had dried up. And if you will actually, again, cast your eye towards the back of the photo, I think, I'm not sure if I'm in front of you, there's 1, 2, 3 dwellings that were still left. This is a shack. And those are the guys that gave us also the hardest time up until as recent as July this year. In order for us to get to move, we had to work in and around them. They were pretty much demanding all sorts of ridiculous things for us to do to them. Again, lesson learned is that in these environments, unfortunately, you need to bring yourself down effectively and work with whomever that you can work with in order to make sure that you resolve these issues. I don't know how many meetings we've had with those people, to a point in some instances we would get calls when we're boarding flights and being told to actually offload ourselves as luggage, and then we'll have to drive back to actually engage with them, because that's the time that they feel comfortable that they can engage you with you on. Okay, go to the next one. That gives you another perspective in terms of how muddy it was. Next one, please. Okay, and then it gets even much more interesting then, where you start having what I call the reality now in terms of what's happening in South Africa, where people get organized to effectively come to your sites and start demanding. And we had to deal with those issues, and we are still continuously dealing with those issues. It's not a free ride. It's just a matter of now just managing the stakeholders that we know. And I think someone earlier on spoke about needing to identify who the role players are and be able to deal with them. And effectively, that's effectively what we then started doing. Next one, please. Okay, and then, oh, sorry, it was supposed to be South Africa's ever-growing construction mafia, and that's where it started beginning, where now it became quite very clear that there was extortionists, there was a mafia, and then there were the business forums. And what is interesting in this particular instance of Ngqamakhwe is that we then realized that the taxi bosses are the ones that are effectively running the town. So you'll see yourselves tomorrow in terms of going to Ngqamakhwe. There's a lot of containers as you drive out the town. Those containers are controlled by certain individuals that are collecting rent, right? And you need to be able to identify and bring yourself down to that rawness of dealing with people and be able to wire yourself such that you are able to deal with these people and communicate with them so that they can hear you. Now, we realized that if we are not to deal with this particular stakeholder, we're going to have a problem in actually getting anything going. And the one thing that we hated to do, which we needed to do, is that we then, with the contractor, and now I'm talking about the main contractor, which at that particular point in time was supposed to be in site, by the way, in March, which only got handed over site around about June, July. We sat down with this gentleman and found out that in actual fact, he is pro-development. It's just the problem, it's the soldiers behind ground that are all fighting for all sorts of contracts. So the first thing that we then did is that we realized his life as well is in danger because they can take him out, so that there's a hierarchy type of issue. And now I'm telling you stories. And I don't mean to scare you, but it's the reality that we're facing. You are safe, by the way, tomorrow. So the reality is that we managed to then contain this gentleman by making sure that, number one, we're bringing him up to Joburg so that we can have productive meetings, because we realize we can't have productive meetings when we're having him and his, what I call his soldiers on the ground. And then we also realized through the contractor that the only way we're going to deal with him and be able to be progressive on site is to make sure we station him in Joburg. So effectively, as we speak, he's being rented by the contractor a one-bedroom flat in Centurion. After the contract, he comes back. But that's a story for another day. But, okay, can move on to the next one. So basically, it continued. Next one, please. Oh, that's a video, sorry. I just wanted to show you the full extent of the site. I think that's a video. Yeah, so basically that gives you the full extent of the site. The site is about 3.5 hectares. It's not currently like that. That's when we were going through our issues. As you see, we still had containers. We still have people that were illegally occupying the site. You'll see in the next slides that the dynamic changes. We had, at this point, we had to get down and put heads together to realize that we need to put this contract on an accelerated program. So we are currently on an accelerated program. Obviously, it's also got its challenges and also financial implications. Can move on to the next one, please. Next one. And that was our biggest problem. So all of you, if you could guess how big this problem is, I think this was about a 600,000 rand problem. They didn't want to move until they got their 600,000. So I'm giving you an indication in terms of what we're dealing with in the Eastern Cape. And I think for us, it's probably the most hardest we've dealt with because of the type of environment that we're in. You're dealing with a whole lot of different things, from politicians, extortionists, etc., etc. Next one, please. This is how currently the site looks. As you probably see that we've made a little bit of progress. So again, I spoke about the retaining wall at the back. That retaining wall, all of it, we had to take it down, put it back up because of the issues that we had with the other contractor. We had to rectify all these platforms that you see here through a new contractor. We had to take out all this retaining wall as well and put it back up. So we've had serious challenges in the site, and the most recent one, that's why I said we needed to slaughter a goat, is that we had to take down this structure and put back those steel columns again. So again, it's just been horrendous dealing on this side, and it has to do with local issues, unfortunately. But be that as it may, as I said, we are very committed to making sure that we finish the project. We are scheduled to finish it. We've got literally about 6 months to finish it. It is an accelerated program. You'll get on site probably tomorrow, and you'll see that the steel trusses are started going up. The maize level has started going up in the spa. And then what we'll do is just we started also the brickwork so that we can work in tandem. In the middle of October, we're going to start putting on the roof, and then we start going to working on the internals. The guys are going all the way up until about the 22nd of December, working. And then we'll pretty much start in the first week of next year to pretty much throw everything that we can at this project to make sure that it works. Just to orientate you on the site, That's our site office. That's our main entrance. We're going to ramp up here, and this is going to be our parking. We've got Cash Build here. We've got Spa there. We've got the bulk liquor store there. We've got Capitec in the middle somewhere. And then we've also got Clicks here. And then we've got Famous Brands as well. We've got, if I'm not mistaken, we've got Ackermans, Pepsel. And then Spa is also going to open their own Chisanyama. Okay. Can go to the next one. Yeah, that gives you another view from another angle in terms of how the site looks. Another angle. And then I was going to go to that's Ngqamakhwe. That's a depressing story, but there's a lot of lessons there. And I think right now the site has quietened down. I mean, the contractor has literally tried, and we've been pushing him. I think I've been here as well with the team every week in order to make sure that things are running smoothly. So we're trying to get it back on program as much as we can. And then I just wanted to touch on some of the stuff that Ben has spoken about that we're starting, so that at least you guys can get a flavor in terms of what else we're doing in the Eastern Cape. We're doing in Ngqamakhwe. Ngqamakhwe, pretty much we handed over site about 2 weeks ago. There was a short turning last week. It gives you a bit of an indication in terms of what the sort of tendencies that we have. It's not a closed mall, it's an open air mall. It's as you enter Ngqamakhwe, it's on your right if you're coming from Umtata, on your left if you're coming from Tofimvaba and the areas. Just to give you a little bit of perspective of Ngqamakhwe, I think Ben has already touched on it. It's the second biggest township village in the Transkei. There is no ATM or any space that you can go to actually just do basic anything between Umtata and Ngqamakhwe. And then when you get to Ngqamakhwe at 8:30, there are queues just going into what do you call those things? They take money? Yeah, those things. There's queues getting into the ATMs. So we felt this is a great opportunity to look at. The site is sitting on about 6 hectares, but we're only probably going to utilize about 4 hectares of that. The remainder, there's plans through the gentleman that we got the site from to do hotels and all of that. There's a lot of demands, as you can see, in East London, that a lot of people come from the villages just to have conferences like we're having here, from those areas, especially the government departments. And I think that is going to probably be another Mtata of the area. It's going to alleviate some pressure off Umtata. It's going to alleviate some pressure off East London. Next slide, please. And then the other one that we're doing, which we're also going to be finished sometime next year, is Alwal North. As you'll know, and I think I answered the question earlier on, we're changing the Spa into a boxer. We're adding an additional element in the middle, and we're on course on that one. The interesting thing on that one is that we've had no issues. It's probably the most quietest out of them all. But it's also probably the most boring one to go to because there's no issues to discuss. And I think what we can be proud of, I think as our team, is that we've taken a bet just as much as you investors have taken a bet on us. We've taken a bet on a lot of black contractors. The guys that are doing Ngqamakhwe for us, Bulk Earthworks, the guy was working for GDK 3 years ago. He worked with us, Lesedi, and now we gave him a 20 million rand contract in Ngqamakhwe. We take pride in that. The guy that finished Lesedi for us, he never had done retail before. He had only done some work, I think, for PIC. And all he was doing is doing shop fitting and the like, but he had experience in retail. We gave him an opportunity to do that center. He's now doing, what do you call this thing? Ngqamakhwe for us. And he's actually the one that has managed to make sure that we keep our hearts and keep our feet on the ground and be able to actually persevere, because he knows the animals that he's dealing with. Sorry to put it that way, but it's just late night talk. And that we will continue to empower those that have never been empowered. We are very deliberate. And I think for us, things like this give us an opportunity to empower those that come after us, so that those can empower those that come after them. And I think through these projects, don't forget, because you are impact investors. We're doing a lot of infrastructure, and I'm not saying that's not important, but if you actually see the faces and and the people that we touch on a daily basis through such initiatives. And fortunately, I've had the opportunity to walk the streets, unlike some of my colleagues, to experience such. It's amazing. And some of them, it's people that life had thrown everything at them. And I hate to end it that way, but there's a quote I want to leave you guys with, which talks about leadership, by Ngqamakhwe. He says, "Leadership is a privilege to better the lives of others. It is not an opportunity to satisfy personal greed."